What the hell do you think you're doing here, Naomi? The voice of Elias Sterling, a billionaire notorious for his ruthless takeovers and known for his bullying charm, cut like a whip across the vast cornfield of his newly acquired ranch. He hadn't been back to this forgotten part of his past in over 5 years. Now, as the new owner, he expected vacant land. He did not expect to find ghosts, certainly not her. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. Naomi Vance, his black ex-wife, stood silent between the towering rows of corn. She was dressed in a simple, olive work dress streaked with the honest dirt and sweat of labor. A straw hat shaded most of her face, but not the proud, unyielding poise of her posture. Her hands were deep in the earth, her back straightened slowly at the sound of his voice, as if she hadn't just expected it, but had been preparing for this moment of collision. "This isn't squatting, Elias," she said, her voice a low, steady sound that challenged his authority. "I've been working this land for over 2 years." "Working it?" Elias scoffed, his custom Italian leather shoes sinking slightly into the rich, dark soil a few feet away. "This ranch is private property. My company owns every inch of it, including the soil you're standing on. And don't tell me those are your kids over there." He jerked his chin toward a wooden crate tucked beneath the old sycamore tree. 4 small children sat side by side. They held empty corn husks, their small feet dusty and bare. 2 girls and 2 boys. They all looked up at the sound of his angry voice. Elias felt a crushing blow of shock. He was staring directly into 4 sets of the exact same unnerving storm-grey eyes that he saw reflected in his mirror every morning. He couldn't breathe. Naomi turned to glance at the children. They were already looking at him, wide-eyed, watching. Still, she calmly bent to grab a bucket. As she did, a folded, yellowed envelope slipped from her apron, landing near her feet in the dirt. Before she could reach for it, Elias stormed forward, his voice a raw, rising shout of disbelief. "Is this your idea of a stunt, Naomi? You disappear for years and then show up on my farm with quadruplets who look exactly like me." She stepped back instinctively. "Don't come closer, Elias." But the bully billionaire already had. His shoes sank deeper into the soft dirt. Naomi shifted to avoid him, and her foot slid on the edge of an old irrigation ditch. She lost balance. With a sharp gasp, she fell backward into the shallow, muddy water, her dress instantly soaked, her braid dragging through the wet soil. The envelope lay half buried beside her hand. For a second, everything froze in the shock of the splash. Then 4 pairs of tiny feet scrambled toward her. The 2 girls, Ava and Iris, leapt from the crate first, their concern immediate. The 2 boys, Leo and Jude, followed. All 4 reached out their small hands to her. "Mommy okay?" asked Ava. Her eyes were wide, shimmering steel grey, the exact shade of Elias's. Iris, the other twin, whispered, "Careful, Mommy," while gently patting her shoulder. Jude handed her a small rag as if it were a crucial medicine. Leo, the 4th child, silently clung to Naomi's muddy skirt, his gaze fixed fearlessly on the towering man. Elias stood there, utterly frozen, shocked, staring into the faces of his own progeny. Those eyes, his mother's eyes passed down to him, were now looking back from the faces of 4 small children, all his. He staggered back a step, the billionaire's composure shattering. That's not possible." Naomi slowly sat up. Mud caked to her arms and legs. The quadruplets huddled close, forming a small wall of limbs and loyalty. "They're mine," she said simply, brushing her wet, dark hair from her face. That's all you need to know. No, Elias's voice was a cracked whisper. No, they look exactly those eyes, Naomi, 4 of them. They're mine, she repeated flatly. All 4 of them. The heat of the sun gave way to a heavier, undeniable truth, cold and shocking. Elias blinked at the children. Ava looked directly at him, then whispered, "Are you Daddy?" The word hit him like a physical blow. He swayed, his jaw slack, the sound of his roaring heart drowning out the quiet world. "You knew," he said to Naomi, his eyes narrowing with old accusation. "You knew you were pregnant when I left." "I didn't," she replied softly. "Not that day." A memory flickered in her eyes, the day he'd driven off, his ambition consuming him. "But when I found out your number was disconnected. Your lawyer sent me divorce papers. There was no return address, no explanation, just signatures." Elias ran a trembling hand through his hair. "You should have told me. You should have stayed." "Stayed where, Elias?" she shot back. He glanced down again at the envelope, still lying half buried in the mud. "What is that?" Naomi quickly picked it up and clutched it tight. "The letter you never sent," she said. "I found it in the pocket of your old coat months after you were gone." Elias looked at her, stunned. "You kept it?" "I kept it," she affirmed, pressing the envelope against her wet chest. "To remind myself of everything I survived without you." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The small boy Jude tugged at her sleeve, his gaze fixed on Elias. Then, in a small, careful voice, he asked, "Is he mad?" "No, baby," Naomi murmured, brushing a kiss onto his forehead. "He's just surprised." Elias stepped forward, hesitantly. Ava, still clutching her mother's arm, reached a tiny hand toward him. Her fingers curled around his pinky. He felt something break inside. "I didn't come here for this," he said, his voice rough. "No," Naomi replied, still seated in the mud. "You came here to see what money could buy, but now you've seen something it can't." Elias looked at her, then at the 4 children. "I don't deserve them," he whispered. "No," she said, "but they deserve a father." In that moment, Elias Sterling, the bully billionaire, stood speechless in a muddy field, staring into the eyes of a life he didn't even know he'd left behind. Elias Sterling didn't remember walking back to his truck the night before. His feet had carried him through the cornrows like a sleepwalker, each step heavy with the weight of the undeniable truth. He sat behind the wheel of his black Range Rover, engine idling, his hands gripping the wheels so tightly the leather creaked. His mind kept replaying the same image. Ava's small fingers wrapping around his, her soft voice asking, "Are you Daddy?" He couldn't sleep, he whispered, his voice thick with weariness. He had tried the motel but found no rest. Now he was back, standing at the edge of the porch, the night sky deep blue. The screen door creaked open, and Naomi Vance stepped out, holding a chipped coffee mug, a towel wrapped around her wet dark hair. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice steady. "I know. Then why are you?" Elias looked down at the dirt between them. "Because you didn't lie." "And I did. I told myself this place didn't matter, that you didn't matter, that I could just build a life on top of a broken one." Naomi didn't speak. "I was wrong," he admitted. "I want to know them. Not because of guilt or blood, but because when that little girl held my hand, I remembered what it felt like to be human again." Naomi stepped off the porch. "I've built a world without you, Elias," she said, her voice uncompromising. "Brick by brick, bath by bath. I've scraped mud out of shoes and prayed through fevers. I've buried pride so deep I forgot what it smelled like. So if you want a place in that world, don't just show up and talk. What do I do then? He asked. She took a sip of coffee. Start by listening. And with that, she handed him the mug, vanilla, cinnamon, something comforting, and turned back inside. Elias stood in the warm circle of porch light, holding her mug. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a billionaire. He felt like a man on the edge of home. He finally sat on the top stair, letting the cool air settle. The screen door creaked again. It was Ava. She clutched a tattered blanket, rubbing her eye, her curls bouncing slightly. I couldn't sleep, she whispered, her voice sleepy. Elias opened his mouth to speak, but no practiced boardroom words came. He hadn't prepared for this small, quiet version of fatherhood. Ava shuffled toward him, dragging her blanket, and plopped down beside him without invitation. I heard yelling today, she said, staring out into the dark field. Were you mad at Mommy? He looked down at her, those same storm-grey eyes, staring at the world, steady and quiet. I was confused, he answered truthfully, and afraid. Ava tilted her head. Afraid of what? He hesitated. Of how much I've already missed. She leaned her small shoulder against his arm. You still have time. That's what Mommy says when I mess up with the chickens. Elias smiled, though his throat tightened with emotion. That's good advice. They sat in silence for a moment. She named me Ava, the little girl continued, because she said something really hard, gave her something really soft. Is that true? Yeah, he said softly. That's true. Inside the house, footsteps approached. The screen door opened again and Naomi appeared, Leo in her arms and Iris trailing behind her, thumb in her mouth. I figured they'd follow the light, she said, gently settling Leo down next to Ava. The little boy rubbed his eyes, blinked at Elias, then scooted closer to his sister. Iris hesitated, glancing at Elias, her pajama shirt slightly backward. Naomi bent down and whispered something in her ear. Iris nodded and walked carefully over to Elias, then plopped onto his other side, leaning into his arm. Just like that, the bully billionaire was surrounded. 3 little bodies curled up against him, warm, trusting. He froze, not from fear, but from the sheer, shocking weight of it all. It was more than he'd ever carried in any boardroom. Naomi sat on the porch steps a few feet away. They don't know, she said quietly. Not the full story. I haven't spoken your name in this house. I never wanted your shadow to raise them. Elias swallowed. I understand. But they've always asked, she added, looking out into the darkness, who they look like, why their eyes are different from mine. I told them they were born in a storm, a special kind, the kind that leaves behind good things. I was the storm, he admitted. Naomi met his gaze. And you left wreckage. A silence stretched between them, dense with truth. I don't want to just explain who I was, Elias finally said. I want to show them who I can be. Naomi pulled her cardigan tighter. You want a second chance, she said. He nodded. It doesn't start with apologies, she continued. It starts with action, real ones. This ranch doesn't run on sentiment. It runs on hands and sweat and showing up. I can show up, he said. She looked at him, truly looked, studying his pressed slacks, the watch on his wrist. She raised an eyebrow. You willing to ruin that fancy shirt for a chicken coop at 6 a.m.? If that's what it takes. She exhaled, and a crack of possibility, not forgiveness, appeared on her face. We start tomorrow. No promises, no expectations, just sweat. And silence, she added. You're not here to lead anything. You're here to learn. I can do that, he said. Naomi stood and opened the screen door. Bring the kids in when they fall asleep. There's a blanket on the couch." Elias nodded as she disappeared inside. He looked down at the children curled beside him. He didn't know how to braid hair or patch a scraped knee. But he would learn. He would be there when they woke up. For now, that was enough. The rooster crowed at 5:14 a.m. sharp. Elias Sterling groaned from the couch, the thin blanket tangled around his legs. His back protested as he sat up. He heard the soft scurry of little feet, the creak of an old door, and a child's giggle. He remembered. He swung his legs off the couch. The hardwood floor was colder than expected. He grabbed his wrinkled, mud-crusted dress shirt from the day before, pulled it on and rolled up the sleeves. When he opened the front door, the cool morning air slapped the billionaire awake. The yard was already alive. Naomi stood near the old coop in a flannel shirt and jeans, her hair pulled into a loose braid, one hand holding a coil of chicken wire. Iris and Ava danced barefoot around her, wearing matching, oversized overalls and rubber boots. Jude sat quietly on an overturned bucket, holding a small bowl of feed. Elias stepped out, rubbing his neck. "You weren't kidding about the chickens," he muttered. Naomi looked over, eyes half amused. "You thought I was being poetic. I thought you were bluffing." "Well," she said, tossing him a pair of work gloves. "Welcome to Riverbend. Breakfast works better when it doesn't run away." He fumbled the gloves but caught them. She motioned toward the coop. "The sidewall's coming loose. We need to reinforce the base. That wire won't hold through another monsoon." Elias walked over, eyeing the lopsided wooden frame. "It looks like it survived a war." "It has," Naomi said, crouching beside the frame. "Just not the kind you think." She handed him a hammer and a small bag of nails. Jude watched them closely. "You good with tools?" she asked, not looking at him. "I own a construction company," he replied. "That's not what I asked." He sighed. "I haven't swung a hammer since college." "Maybe." "Well, today's a good day to remember." They worked in silence for a while. The morning sun painted everything in a soft, golden hue. Iris ran after a chicken, shouting something about it stealing her dreams, while Ava pretended to direct traffic with a stick. Jude, still seated on his bucket, drew circles in the dirt. Elias hammered a nail, missed, and cursed under his breath. Naomi looked up. "You okay?" He glanced at his slightly injured thumb. "I'm bleeding dignity." She almost smiled. "You know," he said more quietly now, his tone changing. "I thought about this place a lot, after I left." "Really?" "Yeah, but always from a distance, like it was a photograph I didn't deserve to keep." She didn't respond. Her hands kept moving, cutting, pulling, shaping wire. "I didn't leave because I stopped loving you," he confessed. She paused for half a breath. "No," she said softly. "You left because you loved success more." Elias lowered his eyes. "I thought if I could just build something big enough, it would mean something, that it would prove something." "To who?" Naomi asked. "I don't even know anymore." Another silence. Then Jude stood and walked over, extending the small bowl of feed. "Here," he said to Elias. Elias looked at him, unsure. "For me?" The boy nodded. Elias accepted it, and Jude sat down again, satisfied. "He watches everything," Naomi said, her voice tender. "Doesn't say much, but when he does, it means something." "I can see that." Ava and Iris joined them again, both dirtier, both beaming. "Daddy helped fix the house," Iris declared. Naomi's eyes flicked up sharply. Elias's breath caught. "I mean the chicken house," Ava added, slightly embarrassed. But no one corrected them, not Naomi, not Elias. He reached down and ruffled Ava's curls. She giggled and leaned into his side. We should wash up, Naomi finally said. Breakfast isn't far. Elias stood, brushing off dirt. What's on the menu? Grits, bacon, maybe some cornbread, if the oven cooperates. His stomach growled audibly. Naomi smirked. As they walked back to the house, Elias lingered behind. Near the porch, a small wind chime, rusted and barely moving, caught his eye. He remembered it. He had bought it at a roadside fair during their first summer. It jingled a soft, broken sound. He turned to follow the others, heart heavier, but anchored. Today he had earned something. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a place at the table. The pump groaned like a dying animal. Elias Sterling cursed under his breath, his expensive watch now caked in mud and rust. Behind him, Naomi Vance knelt beside him, silent and certain. She brushed his hand aside, not unkindly, and repositioned the valve. "You have to coax it," she said, her voice low and instructional. "Not force it. This thing responds more to patience than pressure." Elias watched her hands. They were calloused in a way he'd never noticed before. Rough from honest labor, nails trimmed short, dirt embedded in the fine lines. These were hands that had carried the quadruplets, built fences and scrubbed floors, hands that had survived and built a world without him. "Is that how you see everything?" he asked. "Even people?" Naomi paused, eyes fixed on the pump. "Some things break when pushed too hard, Elias. Others shut down." A loud creak broke the moment. Then a sudden sputter. Water gurgled up through the pipe and spilled into the waiting bucket, cold and clear. Naomi smiled, not at him, but just to herself, a private victory. She stood and wiped her hands on the towel slung over her shoulder. "You're welcome," she said, already walking away. Elias stood, watching the bucket fill. Rushing water used to mean supply lines and contracts. Here, it was just water, cold, real, life-giving. Back at the house, the quadruplets had gathered on the porch. Ava was attempting to braid Iris's curls, which looked more like tangled knots than anything artistic. Leo sat cross-legged with a book in his lap, the little engine that could, whispering the lines under his breath. "I think I can. I think I can. I know I can." Elias set the bucket down. "Good news," he said. "The pump works." Iris cheered. Ava clapped. Leo didn't look up, but smiled faintly, turning the page. Naomi came out with a rag and handed it to him. "You've got grease on your face and probably in your soul." He smirked, wiping his cheek. "It'll take more than a rag for that." "Yeah," she said. "I know." Elias leaned against the porch railing. "When did they start reading?" "Leo first," she said. "He picks up everything. They're smart. They are survivors." Elias was quiet for a moment. "Do they know about me at all?" Naomi shook her head. "They know a man left. That's all." He swallowed. "I'd like to change that." "You can't just swap absence for presence like flipping a switch," she said. "I'm not flipping anything, I'm staying. I'm the bully billionaire who showed up on his black ex-wife's farm and got hit by a shockwave of accountability. I'm staying until I earn my place." "That's a decision you make every day, Elias," she said, "not just once." The front screen door creaked open. Ava peeked out, eyes wide. "Mommy, Iris put jelly beans in the chicken feeder again." Naomi groaned. She turned to Elias. "You wanted to help. Now's your moment." He raised an eyebrow. "Chicken discipline?" He found Iris crouched beside the feeder, her tiny hand full of purple and red jelly beans. She looked up at him, caught in the act, but grinned wide. "They like it," she insisted. "They also like pecking their own poop. Doesn't mean it's a good idea," he said. She blinked. "What's poop?" Ask your mother." He gently scooped the candy out. Iris sulked. "Will they forgive me?" she asked. He looked at her, suddenly serious. "Chickens forget fast. People a little slower. Did Mommy forgive you?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I'm trying." Iris studied him, then nodded solemnly. "Okay, but no more yelling." "I'll work on that." Later that evening, after dinner, Naomi brought out an old photo album and placed it on the table. Elias opened the cover. There he was, shirtless and sunburnt, holding Naomi's hand during their first harvest. A blurry photo of them laughing, a close-up of Naomi holding a baby chick, eyes squinting in the sun. And then, blank pages, years of silence laid bare in paper. Elias closed the album. He wasn't in the blank pages, but maybe, just maybe, he could fill the next ones. The next morning brought rain. Elias stood at the sink, rinsing mugs from breakfast. Naomi was quietly measuring flour for cornbread. The kids were sprawled on the living room floor, a tangle of blocks and crayons. "You'll scare the eggs if you keep clanging," Naomi said without looking up. Elias leaned against the counter. "How did you do it, Naomi? Alone? 4 kids? This farm?" She paused, the spoon in her hand hovering above the bowl. "I didn't have a choice," she said. "And even if I did, I wasn't going to let them grow up wondering if they were a burden." "I meant to write," he said. "After the divorce, after I left." "You didn't," she replied. "No," he admitted. "I didn't." Naomi turned and walked into the living room. "All right, team, let's make something special." Elias followed slowly, sitting on the floor. Iris immediately handed him a glue stick. "We're making a name sign for our treehouse," she explained. "You have a treehouse?" Ava giggled. "Not yet, but we're manifesting." "Mommy says it means we build something in our hearts first," Leo said without looking up. Elias picked up a marker. "What's the treehouse name?" The quadruplets looked at each other. Then Ava spoke. "We want to name it after our family." Elias's hand paused mid-stroke. Leo, quiet as always, whispered, "What about Sterling?" Elias looked up. The boy met his eyes. "That's yours, right?" Elias nodded slowly. "Yeah, it is." The room went still. Naomi watched, wary. "Then it's Sterling Treehouse," Ava declared. Elias couldn't speak. It wasn't just the name. It was how easily they said it, as if his absence hadn't stolen their right to it. Ava wrote it carefully in green crayon. She handed it to Elias. "For the door." He looked down at the paper, his name spelled out by tiny fingers. "Thank you," he said, his voice low. Iris grinned. "Now you're officially part of the build." Elias stepped onto the porch and nailed the sign gently to the wooden beam above the steps. He turned to face Naomi in the doorway. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, I just didn't expect it to feel like that." "Like what?" "Like I belong." She was quiet for a beat. "They gave you a name. It's not the same as forgiveness, but it's something. It's more than I thought I'd get." "Don't let them regret it," she warned. "I won't." By 7 a.m., Elias was working on the western fence line, his hands covered in mud, feeling less like a billionaire and more like a rookie farmhand. Naomi was already at work, hammering corner rails with expert precision. "You're setting the nails crooked," she called, not even glancing up. "I'm improvising." "You're botching." He sighed and straightened the nail. "Remind me why I agreed to this." "Because you said you wanted to earn your name on that tree house." They worked in tandem for the next hour. In a lull, Elias asked, "Did you ever try to reach me?" She didn't look at him. "No, not even once." He nodded slowly. "I think I deserved that." "It wasn't about punishment, Elias. It was about survival." I had 4 mouths to feed. I didn't have time to chase a man who walked away. He gripped the post a little tighter. I thought I was doing the right thing.
I told myself leaving gave you freedom. You didn't give me anything, Naomi said sharply. I took it, and I built something with it. Her eyes met his, clear, steady, unflinching. When they finally stood back, the fence line was straight, sturdy, clean. That might be the first thing I've built with my hands in a decade, Elias noted. Naomi looked at him for a long second. Then in a softer tone, she said, "The kids are proud of you. They don't even know who I am. They know what they see, Elias, a man who shows up, who carries heavy things, who fixes broken stuff and doesn't leave at sundown." They walked toward the house. The kids were having a tea party on the porch. "Mr. Sterling," Ava called, "we saved you the dragon chair." He laughed, touched.
"The what?" She pointed at an overturned bucket with a red bandana tied around it. "It's the strongest one, for brave people." He sat, carefully, playing along. Naomi returned with real lemonade and cornbread. "And what about me?" Elias asked, teasing. Ava giggled. "You're King Fix-It," Naomi smirked. "High praise." Elias looked around the yard, and for the first time in years the title didn't feel empty. "I don't mind breaking as long as I get to stay." Naomi Vance looked at Elias Sterling for a long time, something unreadable in her eyes. Then she turned and walked inside, leaving the screen door open behind her. This time she didn't close it. Elias stepped outside, mug of black coffee in hand. The early evening air smelled of dry sagebrush and something faintly metallic. A storm was lurking. The kids were asleep, curled in a messy heap on the living room rug. Naomi had gone to the feed store. Elias set the mug down and looked toward the western sky. Thick clouds were forming in a low, determined line, moving faster than they should. He knew what a storm like that could mean. Just as he turned to secure the barn door, a truck engine growled in the distance. Not from the main road, but from a private service trail. Elias walked slowly toward the edge of the pasture. A white, unfamiliar pickup idled by the tree line. A man stepped out, tall, tan suit, thin moustache, city shoes. Elias's stomach tightened. "Mr. Sterling?" The man smiled, slick and professional. "You are Logan Bradford." "I'm an acquisitions officer for Thorn Industries." Elias's jaw clenched. "You're trespassing." "Apologies," Logan said. "We're reviewing your old holdings. Our legal team flagged an anomaly. The paperwork on this property was never fully finalized when you stepped away. Technically, it's still fluid." Logan's meaning was clear. It means the land is still fluid. With the right leverage, we might be able to acquire it before the title solidifies, especially if the current resident doesn't have the means to claim it fully. Elias took a step forward, his voice dangerously low. "That resident has a name. Naomi Vance." "Of course," Logan said quickly. "But Miss Vance is not the legal heir. You are, which means our offer comes to you. It's generous, 7 figures, clean close. You walk away without any strings." Elias glanced at the churning storm clouds. "I'm not interested." Logan tilted his head. "It's a small farm, Mr. Sterling. The equipment's dated. 3 kids. 1 woman holding it together with chicken wire and willpower. It's a miracle it's still standing." Elias stepped closer, his voice sharp and cold. "That woman is raising my children." Logan's polished smile faltered. "You're going to turn around, get in that truck and drive back the way you came. If I see you here again..." Logan adjusted his collar. "The offer stands. Storms have a way of changing people." He turned and drove away. Back inside, Naomi was sorting dry goods. I passed a white truck by the ridge, she said without turning. Elias closed the door. Guy from Thorn, Logan something. Her back stiffened. What did he want? To buy the land. Naomi turned. They can't. Not legally, not yet, but they're sniffing around. They'll keep coming. I know. Naomi stared at him. What did you say? Elias met her eyes. I told him to leave, and if they offer more next time, I'll still say no. The room was quiet. They know I can't afford to fight them in court, Naomi said. You won't have to, Elias insisted. I'm not selling, not to them, not to anyone. She looked at him, searching for cracks, for signs of the man who ran from real weather. But he didn't flinch. The storm cracked lightning across the field. Elias stepped closer. They're not taking this place, not while I'm here. Naomi studied him. Then, for the first time since he returned, she nodded, not with caution, but with belief. You better mean it, she said. I do. The storm hit hard. Inside, the kids huddled under a quilt fortress. Elias stood by the front window, restless. Naomi came down the hall. I just checked the barn. The latch on the east door snapped.
It's wide open. Do we have animals out there? Leo the goat and the mare, we'll lose them in the dark if they bolt. I'll go. He grabbed his jacket and flashlight. The wind and rain were brutal. Elias strained his muscles, wedging a shovel and a feed bin against the broken barn door. Inside, he calmed the mare, untangled the goat, and located a roof leak, moving a bucket to catch the water. Just as he turned to leave, something caught his foot. A weathered, torn duffel bag shoved behind a bale of straw. Curious, he opened it. Inside were documents, a small tin box, and a faded child's shirt. He saw the name embroidered faintly near the hem, Leo. He opened the tin box. Inside, hospital bracelets, 3 of them, and a small, faded photo. Him and Naomi. She was holding 3 tiny, swaddled babies. He was asleep in a chair, his head resting against her shoulder, one hand still cradling Ava. Elias sat back, stunned. The memory rushed in like a flood. He had been there. He vaguely remembered the beeping machines. Naomi must have taken the photo. Why didn't I remember? He ran back through the storm. Naomi was in the kitchen. He dropped the bag onto the table. Why didn't you tell me I was there? She turned slowly. You were, but barely. You came, saw them, held them for an hour, then left that same night. You told me you had a meeting in Denver. I didn't hear from you for months. Elias sat down hard, staring at the photo. I don't remember any of it. I thought I left before they were born. No, she said. You were there when Ava opened her eyes. You cried, then you disappeared. You didn't want to remember, Elias. I was a coward, he whispered. Yes, she said. But now you know, and now you decide what you do with that. They sat in silence. Then Ava wandered in, half asleep. Why are you crying, Mr. Sterling? He wiped his face. I'm not. She climbed onto his lap anyway. Naomi watched them for a moment, then poured another cup of coffee. The storm would pass, but the reckoning had just begun. The ground was still wet the next morning. Elias stood by the fence with a shovel. The duffel bag rested on the ground beside him. He scanned the property, the world resuming its rhythm, but inside him, everything had changed. He hadn't earned that image in the photo. Not then. But maybe he could now. He started digging behind the Sterling treehouse spot, clearing the weeds from an old plot. What are you doing? Naomi's voice called from the porch. That was my time garden. It's been dead for years. I'm bringing it back. She studied him. Why? He glanced up, wiping his brow. Because I found my name again, and I want it to mean something.
By afternoon, he had planted 3 small rows, lavender, basil, and thyme, alive, intentional. The children gathered around. "What's this?" Leo asked. "It's a garden," Elias said. "I used to be good at killing them. Thought I'd try keeping one alive." Iris crouched down beside him. "Can we help?" "It's for you, all of you." They each took turns pressing a seed into the earth, patting it gently, whispering names to the soil. That evening, Elias took the photo from the tin box and brought it to the kitchen. Naomi was stirring stew. "I want this on the wall," he said, holding it up. She glanced over. "That old thing? It's the only proof I ever belonged here. I want them to see it, know it. I was there, and now I'm here." Naomi stirred the stew in silence. "I thought leaving would make things cleaner. I thought chasing success meant I could send money and ease the guilt, but all I did was vanish." Naomi Vance continued to stir the stew. Elias Sterling confessed the root of his original sin. "I was afraid," he said, his jaw tightening, "of failing, of being ordinary, of being like my father, drunk, broke, angry. So I made myself into someone else. And in doing that, I left behind everything that made me real." Naomi turned. Her eyes weren't hard, just tired. "You still haven't told them you're their father." "I will." "When?" Elias swallowed. "Soon, but not before I earn the right to say it." The air felt thick. Then quietly, Naomi said, "You should be the one to tell them." "When you're ready." Elias picked up the photo again. "Do you remember what we were laughing about?" Naomi smiled faintly. "You called the nurse, Mom. And she was 22. She made you change a diaper just to get back at you." He laughed softly. "That sounds about right." Later that night, the kids begged for a story. Elias sat on the floor beside their beds, Naomi standing near the door, listening. "Well," he began, "when I was about your age, I used to believe thunder was the sound of giants bowling in the sky." Iris gasped. "Really?" "Yep, and if you listened close enough, you could tell who was winning." Leo squinted. "But there are no giants." Elias grinned. "Not the big kind, just the kind that live in our heads when we're scared." "What do they do?" Ava asked.
"They remind us to be brave." He looked up. Naomi met his gaze, then walked away without a word, but she left the door open again. The next morning, Elias found Naomi sitting at the kitchen table with a yellowed envelope. "It came this morning," she said, voice low. The return address was Thorn Legal Group. Elias tore the envelope open. "They're filing a claim," he said after scanning the contents. "Intent to acquire the land through legal arbitration, citing abandonment, improper transfer of ownership, and lapse in tax filings from the year after I left." Naomi's eyes were calm, but her jaw was tense. "I took care of those taxes, Elias. I paid them every damn year." "I know, but they're using the original deed, the one I never signed over, and now they want to take it all back." Elias sat down heavily.
"They're betting I'll walk away to avoid the fight." Naomi snorted. "They've clearly forgotten who you married. They have deep pockets, and we have kids who need breakfast and a fence that needs another 10 feet. We've got more than that," she said. "We've got roots in this soil." Elias tapped the table. "You ever think about leaving, selling, starting fresh?" "Never." "Then we fight." Naomi stood. "Damn right we fight." Later that afternoon, Naomi brought out an old wooden box, plain but carefully carved. "I was going to give this to them when they turned 10, she said, handing it to Elias. "But maybe it's better now." He opened it. Inside were dozens of letters, one for each child for every year of their lives. I wrote to them what they liked, what they said, what they learned.
I didn't want them to grow up and wonder who they were in case I wasn't around. Elias was overwhelmed. He picked up a letter labeled Ava, age 2, and read aloud. Today you told me the moon was just a flashlight in the sky. I didn't argue because honestly that made more sense than anything else. He swallowed hard. You're the strongest person I've ever known, he said. Naomi shrugged. I just didn't have the luxury of falling apart. Elias stepped closer. You don't have to carry it all alone anymore. She met his gaze, and for the first time, she didn't flinch. That evening, Elias wrote his own letters. To Leo. You remind me of myself before I got scared. Keep being curious. To Iris, you hold the world like it's already yours. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. To Ava, you lead with your heart. That's not weakness. It's strength the world doesn't always recognize. And to Naomi, you gave me a second chance before I deserved one. I won't waste it. Not again. He placed them in the box. Naomi stepped beside him. I think we should tell them, she said. About me? She nodded. They deserve to know where they come from and who's standing in front of them now. Tomorrow morning, he said, taking a breath. Naomi reached out, her hand brushing his. Then we'll do it together. The morning light was soft and golden. Elias sat on the couch, the box of letters on the table. Naomi stood in the kitchen watching the clock. The kids barreled into the room. Breakfast? Ava asked. Soon, Naomi said gently. But first, we need to talk. Elias opened the box. I want to tell you a story. It's about you and me. He looked at Naomi. She nodded. A long time ago, I met someone who changed my life. Her name was Naomi Vance, and I loved her more than I knew how to say. But when things got hard, I did something really stupid. I ran away. The room was quiet. I thought I was protecting her by staying gone. But the truth is, I missed everything. I missed the day you were born, but I was there for a little while. Long enough to hold you. Then I left again, and I didn't come back for a long, long time, Iris whispered. Why? Because I was scared and selfish, and I thought I had to become someone bigger before I could come back. But I'm back now. Naomi stepped forward, placing a hand on Elias's shoulder. He's not just someone helping on the farm, he's your dad. Iris blinked. Our real dad? Yes, Elias said. Your father from the very beginning. Ava's lower lip trembled. But why didn't you tell us before? Because I didn't know how. I didn't feel like I deserved it. But you have the right to know who you are, where you come from. Leo stood up slowly. That's why we all have green eyes like you. Elias smiled. That's right. Iris leaned against Ava. Does that mean you're staying? If you want me to, I'll stay as long as you'll have me. A moment later, Leo crossed the room and threw his arms around Elias's neck. Then Ava, then Iris, all tangled up in limbs and tears. Naomi turned away, wiping her eyes on her sleeve. Later that day, Ava pulled Elias aside. Does this mean we can call you Dad now? Only if you want to, he said, his voice catching. She grinned. Okay.
But I'm going to call you Dad and King fix it. 2 days later, a black SUV pulled into the gravel drive. Elias saw it first. He walked toward the house, slow, measured, alert. Naomi stepped onto the porch. The SUV's door opened. Logan Bradford stepped out. Behind him came Charles Ridley, senior counsel with Thorn Industries, a briefcase gripped like a weapon. Elias stopped 5 feet from the steps. You've got 60 seconds. Charles Ridley stepped forward. Thorn is prepared to make a final offer, $5 million, no contest, no strings. The farm transfers cleanly and you walk away with more than enough to start again. Elias crossed his arms. We're not starting again. We're staying. Logan stepped forward. Mr. Sterling, let's be realistic. This land isn't worth a quarter of that. We're offering sentiment pricing here. Mercy pricing. Naomi narrowed her eyes. Your disparity. Why? Charles hesitated. We have long-term development plans, renewable energy fields. This tract is strategically valuable. And you don't own it, Elias said. Logan's smile faded. If you reject this offer, you're triggering litigation. You might win, you might not, but you'll drown in legal fees trying. Elias stepped onto the porch beside Naomi. We got truth and title and 4 kids who call this home. And we know the last owner before us died in debt to your company, Naomi added. You're not trying to buy land, you're trying to bury paperwork. You've been warned, Logan said as they turned to leave. What comes next isn't friendly. That night, Elias sat at the dining table, surrounded by old deeds and legal books. Naomi sat beside him. They're coming for blood, Elias muttered. They've been coming for it since the day they built their first glass tower, Naomi replied. They think I'll break. Will you? No, but I don't want this to become a war that poisons everything. The kids just started calling me Dad. I don't want their first memory of that to be watching me get hauled into court. Then we fight smart, Naomi said, her hand brushing his. You've done this alone for so long. But I'm not alone anymore, and neither are you. Elias then revealed his discovery. I've been looking into Thorne's land acquisitions. They've been using shell companies to buy out struggling farms all across the county. They're building an offshore logistics private airport. It'll cut right through the reservation lands if they get access. Naomi stood, grabbing her phone.
I know someone who works at the county recorder's office might be able to get us access to their early filings. Elias raised an eyebrow. We go public with this. We start a real storm. Naomi met his gaze, a fierce resolve in her eyes. The quiet fight for their family had just become a fight for their community. The next morning, the farm was alive with colour. The Sterling tree house had its first painted walls, lavender and red, a family compromise. Elias climbed up to hammer in the final frame beam when he spotted Iris standing below with a notepad. What's that? He called. She held it up. List of rules for the treehouse. Let's hear it. 1. No fighting. 2. No lying. 3. No taking cookies without permission. 4. No bosses unless it's Ava. 5. Always say the truth, even if it's hard.
Elias paused at that last one. That's a good rule. Hard, but good. Ava climbed up next to him and whispered, Even if you're scared. Especially then, he said, brushing her hair from her eyes. Naomi watched from the kitchen window, her heart full, but fear still pulsed beneath it. Thorne Industries had already drawn a line in the dirt. The letter arrived in a white envelope, Maricopa County Court, Notice of Civil Action. Elias held it as though it were burning. They filed officially, preliminary hearing in 10 days, Thorne Industries versus Elias Sterling and Naomi Vance for unlawful occupancy and trespass on corporate-acquired land. They're calling us squatters now, Naomi scoffed. They want to provoke us into folding, wear us down, wear us out. Naomi grabbed her keys.
Then it's time we talk to someone who knows how to fight bigger storms than this. Marianne Collier. Elias blinked. Isn't she the one who sued the mining company 10 years ago and won? Yep, still hasn't flinched. She'll take my case. They found Marianne Collier in a small office nestled between a thrift store and a feed shop. The walls were lined with photos of protests and courtroom sketches. You brought backup this time, she said, looking at Elias. The runner. Elias flinched, but held his ground, the one trying not to be. For the next hour, they laid out everything. The deed, the birth certificates, the timeline. the development plans, and the children's connection to the farm. Mary Ann closed her notebook with a snap. This isn't just a land grab, it's a strategy. They've targeted small holders, mostly minority-owned properties. If they win here, they set a precedent. I'll take the case, she said. But if we do this, it becomes public. Press, interviews, they'll dig into everything, your finances, your kids, your history, including your disappearance. I'm ready, Elias said. So am I, Naomi added. Back at the farm, the Quadruplets were painting wooden signs for the treehouse. Leo was stenciling, "No grown-ups without permission." Jude worked on a crooked arrow that read, "Fort Freedom." And Iris was writing Sterling House. Elias walked over. "Iris, why that name?" She shrugged. "'Cause it's ours now. Sounds like home." Later that night, Elias stood in the doorway, staring at the photo he had found in the barn, now finally framed and resting on the mantel. Naomi walked in. "Mary Ann's filing the countersuit tomorrow. We're officially in it." Elias reached into the drawer and pulled out a drafted will. "It names you sole owner of the land. No loopholes. If anything happens, they won't get it." Naomi's eyes softened. "I don't want to talk about that." "I do, because for the first time in a long time, I know who I am and where I'm supposed to be." She stepped closer. "You're their father. You're my family, and no company, no courtroom, no threat is ever going to take that from us." He cupped her face and kissed her. "Then let them try." The courthouse was small and sterile. Elias stood beside Mary Ann, wearing a clean but wrinkled suit. Naomi was at home with the kids. Mary Ann stood before Judge Robert Bellamy. "Your Honor, we represent the rightful co-owners of Sterling Farm, who have maintained, developed, and sustained the property in question for over a decade. We intend to prove that the land grab by Thorn Industries is not only baseless, but part of a wider pattern of predatory acquisition targeting minority-owned land throughout the state." Charles Ridley stood next. "Your Honor, this isn't a story about oppression or hardship. It's a legal matter, plain and simple. Mr. Sterling vacated the property, left the land dormant, and therefore defaulted on stewardship. Outside, the farm was alive. The kids had set up a lemonade stand. Neighbors came in waves, farmers, teachers, veterans. Ava recorded interviews on her pink tablet. One old rancher teared up and said, "Why, your mum gave me free eggs every Sunday for 2 years. That's what I remember." In the courtroom, Mary Ann presented the paper trail. Receipts, tax documents, photos of renovations, and a weathered black and white image. "This is Thomas Sterling, Elias's father. He worked this land, died here. The farm isn't just an asset. It's blood, legacy, memory." Logan stood unfazed. "Legacy doesn't override law. Sentiment doesn't rewrite statute." Mary Ann nodded. "Then let's talk about the law. Let's talk about how your firm funneled purchases through 6 shell corporations, targeting properties that hadn't filed new titles in over 5 years. Let's talk about internal memos we'll be submitting as evidence in discovery, ones that mention Sterling Farm by name, with a note that reads, 'Minority optics risk. Use third-party agent.'" Ridley's face went pale. The damage was done. In the days that followed, the story went viral. Farm fights back. Big money versus family roots. At the next hearing, Judge Bellamy looked out over a packed courtroom. "This case has become about more than one family, so let's treat it like the example it's become." The pressure mounted. Mary Ann was followed. Her car was vandalized. "They're stalling," she warned Elias and Naomi, "trying to bleed you dry with time." Naomi received dozens of letters of support, even from the nearby reservation. One anonymous letter read, "I grew up not far from you. My daddy told me land like yours was never meant to be ours. But you prove it ain't true. Keep fighting for you,
For all of us. Later that night, with the storm howling, Ava crawled into bed with them. "Is the house going to break?" "No, sweet pea," Naomi said gently. "It's built strong." "What if the judge says we have to go?" "Then we figure it out together, but we're not running."
"Not again," Elias promised. The next morning, Mary Ann called. "She was followed last night. Her car was keyed. This case is not just about land anymore. They're scared," Naomi said. "That's why they're desperate." That afternoon, Elias gathered the kids in the treehouse. Leo asked, "Are we going to lose our home?" "No, even if they take the land, they can't take this. Our family, our truth." Ava sat up. "Then let's build a sign, a big one, so they see it before they even get out of their car." By sunset, the sign was planted just beyond the gate, carved into salvaged wood. "This land is ours. Love lives here." "They'll see this and come harder," Naomi said, standing beside him. "Then we meet them harder still," Elias replied, taking her hand. The courtroom was packed. Elias felt Naomi's hand slip into his. The fight was not just winnable, but right. The final court hearing was electric. Elias and Naomi sat side by side, their hands laced together. Judge Robert Bellamy entered, and the courtroom fell silent. The judge acknowledged the public interest, but stressed they were dealing in facts. He referenced the comprehensive evidence provided: tax payments, renovation records, witness testimony, and, most crucially, internal communications from Thorn Industries. Those communications raised particular concern. It is the opinion of this court that Thorn Industries, through its affiliated shell companies, engaged in a pattern of predatory land acquisition. This was done with full knowledge that rightful claimants would lack the financial or legal resources to defend their property. A gasp filled the room. Therefore, this court rules in favor of the defendants, Elias Sterling and Naomi Vance. Full ownership of Sterling Farm is hereby restored to them without restriction. Tears and applause erupted in the courtroom, a deep, collective sigh of relief. Logan Bradford's face drained of color, and Charles Ridley looked devastated. Elias closed his eyes, pressing his forehead against Naomi's shoulder, letting the sound of victory wash over him. Judge Bellamy tapped his gavel. "Let the record show this court still believes in justice." Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Elias and Naomi stood arm in arm, flanked by Mary Ann Collier and Miss Clara. A reporter asked, "Mr. Sterling, what will you do now?" He smiled, shielding his eyes from the sun. "Go home, fix the south fence, check the irrigation, and let my kids paint the chicken coop." Mary Ann leaned into the microphone. "Let this be a message to every smallholder, every family struggling to keep what's theirs. You don't have to fold. You don't have to be rich. You just have to stand." Back at the farm, the quadruplets, Ava, Iris, Leo, and Jude, waited on the porch in their homemade victory shirts. Sterling Farm heroes. Ava had made a crown, and Leo held a sign reading, "Free lemonade for champions." As Elias stepped out of the truck, they ran to him. He caught them in a sweep of arms. "You won," Iris squealed. "No," he said, his voice cracking. "We won." Naomi watched from the truck, letting him have the moment. The man who had once walked away now standing strong in the place he had built back with his own hands. He looked up at her and mouthed, "Thank you." She mouthed back, "Welcome home." That evening, the neighbors gathered by the fire pit, bringing food and celebrating the victory. Pastor Harlan said grace, blessing the hands that refused to let go. Ava stood on the picnic table, her crown askew, and read a speech from her pink notebook. "We didn't fight for money. We fought for memories and lemonade and pigs with funny names. We fought for stories because our stories matter. And we won. Someone started singing, "This land is your land," and the whole field echoed with it. Elias stood with Naomi, his arm around her shoulder. "We did it," he said. "We're just getting started," she replied, resting her head against him. He closed his eyes. The soil felt at peace beneath his feet. The legacy they'd almost lost now pulsed stronger than ever, alive in laughter, in love,
And in land, secured by their courage to protect what was rightfully theirs. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.